Yes, sir.
Could you expand your point on paranoia and metanoia? I heard you just say, I want to see if this is so, that a lot of this flowering of technology is a paranoid attempt to simulate a metanoia.
No, I was saying that the fundamentalists who attack the technologies or the New Ages oftentimes generate paranoid narratives, and that paranoia and metanoia are isomorphic but not identical, and that if you want to really understand a culture and its complexity, you can't study it with academic specialization, but you have to take in everything from what the paranoids are saying, what pornography is saying, and body language and all of this. And then sometimes you see in the mad narratives of the paranoids a kind of crazy poetry that captures the invisible environment. So things like science fiction and Terminator 2 and the dissolution of the body, I think, are profound descriptions, and I'd take it all the way back to the emergence of television and early science fiction like the invasion of the body snatchers and invasions from outer space. When we became aliens to our own world and immigrants to a new world, all our mythologies were of invasion from outer space. But I think this is a Feuerbachian projection outward of something much more subtle that was going on. And so I find in paranoid narratives something that's really important that I, as a cultural historian, can't dismiss as just crazy. But I can't take them literally either and say, yeah, that's the truth. And so when I moved from New York to Colorado, I was surrounded by fundamentalist right-wing survivalist communities. I'd been living in New York and was told this is a dangerous place, but when I moved to this village of 45 people, they had bazookas in their pickup trucks and were, constantly threatening to burn us out because we were alien. I really discovered a much more dangerous environment than anything I ever encountered in New York. And their whole explanations of reality were just totally paranoid. The Rockefellers were going to start a nuclear war. They were going to blow up the planet, and their headquarters were going to be Crestone, Colorado. And I was a dupe and conspiracy of the Trilateral Commission and all the, just got this wild stuff. And so I was just fascinated. And when I quit the university and exposed myself to the edge of the counterculture and the alternative movement, I lost the kind of MIT filter that kept the paranoids outside of my office. And so they came in by droves. And I learned an awful lot from just listening to their narratives as a description of what's going on. I remember one 16-year-old kid who came to me and talked for an hour and a half about he had been born to teach humanity how to have the proper bowel movement. And he went on for an hour and a half about how to have the proper bowel movement. And I thought, yeah, this is the problem of our culture with dioxin and plutonium. We don't know what to do with our shit. And this kid is a 16-year-old dealing with this central problem of elimination. And so ever since then, I've been fascinated. Now, sometimes paranoid books get published. I won't mention any names so I don't get sued, but there are a few out there. But I think they're still, worth reading. But my attempt is to use paranoia as information like comic books or Steiner or mysticism. Everything is grist for my mill. But I would hope that I'm operating at a metanoic level of using all of this in a more socially responsible form of discourse, I hope. Oh, gosh, there's so many. You were patient.
In 1976, I did a double-blind controlled study on the Bach flower essences. In 1979, developed a new way of prescribing them using I Ching.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I saw on page 128 of your book, you discussed the importance from the science fiction appreciates the unexpected, whereas other worldviews tends to reduce it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if you could extrapolate how the role of synchronicity would be affecting global transformation, and who are the people you respect and esteem that are doing work in synchronicity now?
Well, I don't know much beyond the original work of, was it Dirac and Jung, Carl Jung. The Bach flower remedies, one of the things I discussed for them is that it was interesting to me in living in Switzerland that they're available in regular, conventional, quote, normal drugstores, and that the polarization that I had experienced in America between the AMA and quackery was not the case in Switzerland. And then when I looked into it, I found that they still affirmed the tradition that they would call Paracelsian medicine, and went back to their own cultural roots that Paracelsus was a doctor in Basel, and it's possible to be a homeopathic doctor and still have an MD from the University of Zurich. In America, I think when you get sick, you lose your civil liberties. And so this other tradition fascinated me. I think synchronicity is a way of doing what I was talking about in Paranoia, that if you have a blinders on and you're only, you structure your narrative investigation, you say, this is my area of research, these are the questions I'm going to ask, this is what I'm looking for. Your answers are determined by your question. But if suddenly something happens out there that is not what you're looking for, but at the unconscious level is the deep answer to your program, then that's a kind of synchronicity. So this is like Kate Cooley in the Benzene Ring, or in the Gaia 2 book, wherever I talk about this going on with Varela's dream on cognitive bliss that he had at one of our scientific conferences. So that kind of synchronicity is where you precipitate into the environment the results of your questioning, but your imaginative connections are beyond the scope of your rational mind, and so it has to come at you as that which is other, the external. If you were much more supple and imaginative, the artist or the mystic, it would not necessarily be experienced as otherness. It might be much more part of the imaginative exploration. In schools, we're not taught to think this way, and so we tend to slice things up, and therefore we need synchronicity to deliver us. Yes?
Your thyroid is your psychic center.
It's part of it. I mean, that's the physical base of the psyche, but it's not the only thing. It's involved, but it's not. You can't. In other words, you can't causally locate it. That's too linear and reductionist. It's involved, but it's much more complicated.
Can you restate that statement?
She said the thyroid is your psychic center, and I'm just saying it's not a one-to-one correspondence. It's you know, it's like if you're making bread and you're folding in raisins into the dough and you fold it up and you make braids. The subtle bodies enfold in and out of one another. So the thyroid is not one-to-one the explanation of the psyche. That's all I'm saying. It's not causal and linear. Does that make any sense, or is that too flip?
What kind of problem did you have with it?
So just cancer. I mean, as a kid, I used to get up and see the sky light up with the atom bombs. You know, and I think it was Bernard Glass did a study of, you know, it's like Chernobyl, did a distribution study of the waves of the open-air testing of the atom bombs in the 50s, and the incidence of cancer of the thyroid along the southwest were much higher than would be normally expected. So when I got up at LA and looked at the sky light up from the atom bomb test in Las Vegas, I was, you know, close enough to be involved in it. So it takes no, you know, long, elaborate explanation to figure it out. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's go way back.
You mentioned Lindisfarne. Did you
Lindisfarne? Yeah.
your connection with this?
I used to be a professor, and then inspired by Ivan Illich and the whole gone are the days of the alternative movement of the counterfoil institution, I quit the university and set up Lindisfarne as another way to live the humanities in a technological society. I tried to do it at MIT, but MIT was more interested in the Vietnam War days of behavioral science and control, and not bringing science and mysticism, you know, and art, science, and religion together. So I quit and set up Lindisfarne in '72 in New York. And so it's a kind of distributive lattice of artists, scientists, philosophers, astronauts, Zen monks, sisters, Benedictine monks, about 47 of us, architects. And we come together and work on various projects. This is one of the projects, and Gaia 2 was another one we did in Italy. Last week, the Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava, who's a Lindisfarne Fellow, and Ralph Abraham, the mathematician, and Varela, the neuroscientist, and Lynn Margulis, the microbiologist, we all came together to work on designing a bioshelter for the top of St. John the Divine, the cathedral in New York, and it's going to bring together art, science, and religion, and electronic stained glass, and all kinds of stuff that, you know, doesn't exist yet. So it's a way of collaborating that I just found difficult to do in the university. So we have a center in New York, which is the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, and then we have the opposite, a mirror opposite, in a Zen monastery in Sangre de Cristo, where we have a kind of Lindisfarne mountain retreat. And the Zen monks take care of that place. I founded it and set it up in '79 and then gave it to the Zen monks. And so we alternate between those two. But we're not a location, we're a lattice, you know, in that sense of Cogsci. Yes, sir, way in the back. It was the sunglasses, yes.